Hi everyone, it's Ren here. I hope you're doing well, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the INFJ Stare, the notorious way in which an INFJ looks at people. Supposedly the stare is something that is like specific to INFJs and INTJs. From what I understand, the descriptions of it that I have seen suggest that the INTJ stare tends to be a little more kind of on the intense side, maybe, or on the sort of determined side, whereas the INFJ stare is, in my understanding of it, more akin to gaze, so more akin to a contemplative kind of way of looking at the world and looking at others. Let me see. No, I thought that was someone in because my cat is here, by the way. So let's see if she bothers me again. Hazelnut. So basically, the way I understand the stare these days, the little theory that I have for the stare might not be an original one, but it's one that I have thought about, and I thought that it might be worth sharing it with you. Now, prior to my entering into this discussion of the stare in particular, I would like to suggest that, I think that it's possible for many other types to have a kind of particular way of looking, and I know that there are articles online on Psychology Junkie and on in other places on the internet where you have like classifications of different ways of looking, like for as per type. So supposedly like an Dom has a kind of glances around a lot, jumping around, corresponding to the any ideation, and we've got lots of other. Supposedly SE is kind of intense. Well, as far as I understand it, the INFJ stare and the INTJ stare, they are perhaps they are also well known because they can prove to be a useful way to identify people about whom one might not be certain that they are INFJ or INTJ, and if you can access a particular telltale sign that person is of that type, well, then you seize it. And apparently the INFJ stare is a very specific thing. The INTJ stare is also a specific thing, and let's look at it in detail. Not all INFJs, I don't think that all INFJs have a stare necessarily. I think that the stare is probably something that can be facilitated also by purely physical characteristics that a human being can have, such as the color of the eyes, the expression on the face, the lighting, a bunch of different things. Of course, if you know a person for a long time, you're used to them sort of like looking like you're used to them being kind of intense looking or not intense looking, and you're going to be sort of judging based on a whole series of experiences rather than a single experience. But I do know INFJs who are legit INFJs who do not have like what you would call like a very recognizable sort of intense stare that they express to you just in this very arresting fashion. And that doesn't mean that they're not INFJs. What I would say is that if someone has an INFJ stare, that probably means that they're INFJs. But if they don't have it, it doesn't mean they're not INFJs. There are varieties among the INFJs. As you know also, there are two subtypes primarily. There is the intuitive subtype of INFJs who are like very, very deep into NI. And then you have the F subtype of INFJs who are kind of very FE led to the extent that sometimes they might ask themselves, am I an ENFJ or something like that. So the more sort of feely INFJs and the more sort of N strong INFJs, often that comes with a strong T as well, the two introverted functions and chances of looping it often as well, which is something that happens to me, maybe happened to me more in the past. I think I'm a bit more in control of it now. But I'm definitely an N subtype of INFJ, and I've always been told that I kind of had a penetrating gaze or looked at people kind of intensely, that I could be intimidating sometimes. You know, these are things I've heard before. Sometimes they're not necessarily encapsulated in in the opinion of people in my eyes, but it's just my whole being. You know, it's like your whole being is kind of contemplative and intense, you know, and sorry about that, sorry about the movement there. And it tends to be concentrated in the eyes, but this is very connected to the theory I want to propound in the second half of the video, which is that I think, you know, the fact of being an INFJ, cognitively speaking, in terms of cognitive functions, does not cause the stare. I think what happens is that when you are led by introverted intuition, like when this is like the primary form of relationship that you have with the world, this is your perception, this is the filter through which you see things, this is how you see things. It's not just in the eyes that is manifested, it's manifested in probably all the senses, because all the senses are ways for us to perceive things, right? We perceive with the eyes. It always has had a pride of place among the senses. Even in Plato, the eyes, the sense of sight, is king or queen among like all the different senses. It's intersubjective as well, so that when you talk to someone, you're like face to face, you see their eyes and you look at their eyes. You don't like think in terms of listening first, or you don't think about in terms of touching, which also could imply other things in coded language, or tasting, even worse. But yeah, the eyes have pride of place, and they're very intersubjective, which is probably why we tend to describe others sometimes in terms of the way they look. It's a nice way of encapsulating a personality, and the introverted intuition does not cause the INFJ stare. I'm pretty convinced of that. What I would say is that we are through and through introverted intuitive. And that's like in our behavior, that's like in our, you know, in how we relate to the world in terms of everything, in terms of sort of perceiving the different pieces of data that it gives to us. And it could be abstract data, concrete data, anything, right? And it just so happens that because the eyes are so visible on the face, and because it is intersubjective, usually when we look at someone, that person is able to perceive the way that we look at them. It turns out that the eyes are perhaps the organ that manifests the introverted intuition the most, if you like. And it turns out that introverted intuition manifests itself in this way, right? And so why is it a stare as such? Why is it a gaze? Because I think maybe the expression gaze would be more appropriate. But this, you know, I'm not an English speaker, I'm a French speaker, and I love the English language, but I think that there's a slight distinction between a gaze and a stare, and I find that a gaze is perhaps a little piercing. Like maybe we could say the INTJ has a stare and the INFJ has more of a gaze, and which is kind of vague, and at the same time it's very, very precise and focused. It's a mix of both, right? And how could we sort of theorize where it comes from if it is not a pure physical manifestation of introverted intuition, but if it is literally introverted intuition manifesting itself through the eyes, right? I think that the best way that I understand it these days is that when we look at people via introverted intuition, the way I tend to think about this is when we look at someone that we're talking to, we're never focused only on what the person is saying. We're like, and it's not that we are consciously trying to analyze everything they're saying. I mean, that would be kind of freaky, right? It's more that we're trying to, like, we're intuitively seeing them as kind of a massive dimensions and things. They have feelings, they have emotions. Where are they speaking from, what is their mood at the moment, what are they trying to appear like, what are they thinking about, what is their psychological state, I mean, all these different things. And I think that we're trying to make sense of all of these different things as an essence that we can then relate to our own essence, because we like to see things in terms of, we like to perceive people, unlike INFPs, not in terms of their pure individuality. So we don't celebrate individuals as individual instances of human beings, if you like. We celebrate individuals as members of the species of human beings. We relate and we are moved by the idea that we have brethren among the class of human beings, and we tend to universalize that notion. So when we're talking to someone, we're perceiving a human and we are trying to make sense of their different dimensions, the dimensions of their individuality, of their singularity, but in such a way that it can be reduced to an essence that we can relate to, because it has the same form as the form of our essence, and with its own little quality, which makes it its own. And so you could imagine that you have like lots of different dimensions that are floating about when someone is talking to you. So you have what they're saying, but you also have what they're thinking, their emotional state. And almost without making any effort, those variables, they're kind of floating around. And introverted intuition, this gaze, my estimate of it, it's kind of like you're trying to catch the alignment of these different, imagine that these dimensions are like spheres and they're kind of moving around, and you're trying to kind of get to the alignment there so that you get to the essence. And the essence is like when the alignment is produced, you can see the essence of who the person is. And so when you're looking at them and you're focused on what they're saying, but there is in the background this search for the alignments that will give you the individuality of the person, and through it the universality of their belonging to the class of human beings, our own class. I feel like that was kind of an intense explanation, but yeah, this is kind of how I understand the INFJ Stare. So this is my theory. Do you think that you have a stare if you're an INFJ? Do you think that you're one of those INFJs, perhaps F subtypes, that have a stare that's more subtle, a gaze that's more subtle, that people don't mention as much? What are your eyes? Please let me know. And I will be seeing you soon, guys. Take care.